It starts in Compiègne, just outside of Paris, and finishes in Roubaix. The 26 sectors of cobblestones this year are made up of 7 new sections as well. To me, the race always starts at Troisville, 2.2 kilometers of cobblestones, 161 kilometers to go to the finish. But a very tough section has been brought in this year, 19 to go at Aulnoy-les-Valenciennes, 2.6 kilometers in length, just over 62 miles to go to the end. When you look down to the really difficult sections, though, Mons-en-Pévèle is one that really strikes fear into the riders. It's 3 kilometers in length, 47 kilometers to go. And as always, very often the decision is made with 4 sections of cobblestones to go on the Carrefour de l'Arbre, 2.1 kilometers long, just 10 miles to go to the finish. Let's not forget the race is 259
8 riders have gone through with a lead of 11 minutes. None of them we will talk about as a likely winner of this race. This is the crucial part. The only
time with his Paris-Roubaix here this afternoon.
Well, there's the problem, you see, and the rider from Libitus Seguros there looks to me as though it is Alan Davis, and that is a terrible shame, because Alan I would have put amongst guys for a hot finish here, but it looks as though Davis is the worst injured there of that big shunt from Australia. There it is again in retrospect, and it's all...
The very moment when you get off of the climb of the very tough 2.6 kilometer section of cobbles, you only have a few moments of respite before you're back onto this section of cobbles. That's where the leaders in the bike race find themselves. This is also quite long, 1.2 Ks, very rough, very slick cobbles. They're starting to dry out a little bit as the day goes on, and we haven't had some of the intermittent.
And you could pull yourself back into the fold, and that's exactly what Peter van Petegem has done. And also George Hincapie, who had himself that little mechanical incident, a quick change. Maybe he was even passed a wheel across by one of his teammates, because I have a feeling I haven't noticed Michael Barry in this group anymore, and he may have made the big sacrifice of passing a wheel over to Hincapie.
Anything is possible in Paris-Roubaix. This is the 8th sections of cobbles of the day now, section 19 of 26. There's still an awful lot of hard rocks ahead of these riders, but this was always noted as one of the crucial parts of the course. The strong men need to get here now and show they can ride this race from the front. And Hincapie, that's the saddle adjustment being done of Sebastian Chavanel there. That's his bike, and this is him. He's looking as though he's on a strange bike, trying to get his other ready. The mechanic's working on it. He's betwixt bunch and brake just now, trying to wait for what will be a bicycle change when they fix it.
I've never seen anything like that before. The mechanic actually standing on top of the car trying to fix the machine for this guy. I think he's probably having a problem riding on the neutral service bike, and very often these teams actually have different kinds of pedal sponsors and different kinds of shoe sponsors, so it may well be that his shoes didn't actually click right into the wheels, into the pedals of the neutral service bike that was handed up to him, which is why this mechanic here is doing some pretty crazy stuff, Bob.
Standing on the top of the car trying to change the saddle that was broken for that man Chavanel right there. He's on a strange bike, probably a lot different equipment than what he's used to, and it makes an incredibly difficult race just that much harder, almost impossible to do.
Actually, if you look at his pedals there, he's got the very old-fashioned pedals, which are actually fastened on with straps.
Yep.
You don't use those very often. Only the neutral service cars do that for the situation when a rider
but now Quick Step are deciding this is the time to make one decision. There's their man in second wheel. This is the most interesting ride, and I think the CSC rider there might well have been Lars Mikkelsen who's got in there. It is. He's also a man for the cobbles. This is time now. Hincapie's got to move up. It looks like they could be moving up.
Hincapie was in that group. He was just on the back of the group, actually. He was nicely placed there. You can see the reaction now coming from Fassa Bortolo and Fabian Cancellara. He too has been caught out by that acceleration.
Hold position. This is the push that's been causing the trouble. And tucked in there is Hincapie, second from the back. He's done well. Mikkelsen has got in there too, another strong man. 4:15 the gap.
Fletcher and Cancellara from the Fassa Bortolo teams trying to struggle back to the leaders, making a big team effort there. The two of them relaying each other. I think
that's the second group. That is the group there with Georgie Hincapie in it. And I think this is going to be rather interesting to see over the next few kilometers, because there's another section of cobblestones coming up very rapidly.
7 riders now trying to get on terms with those 5 leaders, but this is a decisive group now. It contains Cancellara, who finished 4th last year, Lars Mikkelsen, Leon van Von, Pizzato is also in this group, and George Hincapie should be in the group.
Tough crash.
Maggie Baxter riding over to the right-hand side. Hincapie just picking his way through. This is a precarious moment, actually, as they catch their leading group, because as they try and ride by, the leading group will look over their shoulders and maybe move left and right and cause a dangerous movement in the main peloton as these riders form. But very shortly, I would say, Phil, they will
drive now. Pave sector 10, Monzon Pavel. There you see the 5 stars. It's a bad one. Already there's a split in this group. 11 men have come onto this sector with a 35-second lead over Van Bonnen, Stefan Westerman and Kevin Holtzmans. Holtzmans along for the ride. Won't endanger Tom Bonnen. Now, is this going to be in the big push? The man who always surprises me is Juan Antonio Fletcher. He's about the only
really came from Filippo Pozzato, and he really blew the race apart. We're looking now, I think this group has now been reduced to the men who came across. There are just 5 riders leading the race. Tom Bonnen there, and this is rather interesting because Cancellara seems to be in a spot of bother. Now that's a surprise because, Bob, that makes a mess of the tactics.
That's a bit of a disaster. Juan Antonio Fletcher was working for this man, was going so hard that he got dropped. So you'll have to wonder what Cancellara is thinking of that. It's just an absolute disaster for Fossa Bortolo. Fletcher now is going to have to turn off the gas, get on the wheels, on hope that his teammate can come back into the front.
Superbly. Magnus Bagstead, little bit suspect Fletcher. George Hincapie looks absolutely great. And we're all worried about Lars Mikkelsen because he could be the big joker in this pack.
25 kilometers to go. I'm amazed at how confident Tom Bonnen is there riding on the front. He has not asked anybody on any of these sections of cobblestones to come forward. He feels like a man possessed. He feels like a man who can walk away with this race anytime he wants to. Bob, this is a young man of just 24 years of age, but over this last week, he's no longer a boy. He's a man.
This is the second group. Familiar tale now. Westerman warning at the turn, grabbing the bottle. And Van Bonnen and Cancellara are the only 3 workers in this group. Well, I take my hat off, though, to the boys at the back there. Those 3 riders at the back were in the breakaway, and they're still in the second group on the road. Looking at the leaders now of Paris-Roubaix.
Americans having a great spring so far with Bobby Julich, already the winner of a couple of stage races. Maggie Baxter now making a big attack. That is a good move by the big Swede on the Liquigas team. Fletcher trying to close the gap now. Doesn't seem to have too much trouble closing to the gap. Baxter now throwing down the gauntlet.
Throwing down the gauntlet. This is the moment when everybody has to show their cards. Hincapie just lying off the back, but look at that there. Tom Bonnen is perfectly placed onto the wheel of Fletcher. Fletcher may have well have been hiding his game there. Hincapie responds, comes right round the wheel there of Lars Mikkelsen. He's looking comfortable. He's responding, but Bob, he shouldn't be sitting there in 4th or 5th place. It's too far back.
Well, that was the point we were making, Bob. He shouldn't have been last man. Now he's got to close because, surprisingly, it was Mikkelsen.
Mikkelsen being not quite as strong as the others. George has made the juncture. Mikkelsen followed George back across to our leaders. Big attack by Baxter. Now let's see if the cooperation goes out of the breakaway and the attacks that are inevitable start to come. Still a long ways to the finish. This is going to be...
And Bagstead, I think, is in trouble. He might just hang on. It's a tough crosswind, but the crowd protecting them.
Well, you can see the Scottish flag up to the side there alongside the Belgian flag as we come very much closer to the Pave de l'Arbre. This is a long section of cobblestones. It starts with the Pave Bur. There's a bit of a gap there between Bagstead and Bonnen, and in fact Mikkelsen has pulled off. Boom, and he goes out the back.
Mikkelsen's in big trouble. I think the legs just exploded together at 15 kilometers to go, and Bagstead needs to grit his teeth now because that gap is opening. Disturbed by the...
digging deep.
This is a huge effort now. This is the last ounce of strength to see just how. Look in the distance. That is Bagstead. He's not done for yet. The big Swede could be back in this fight. This is total commitment now by the best bike riders at Paris-Roubaix. It is how much strength do they have left for the finish. Bonnen is testing them to the full. Look at the face of Hincapie. I think he's still cool.
He looks good. He looks cool. He doesn't look as if he's under any stress at all. He's got his hands right on the top of the brake levers there, nice and comfortable. Bonnen, though, he wants this. He is trying to ride this in the manner of Johan Museo, and I wonder at 24 years of age if he can. Maybe at this point, Bob, he is throwing away his Paris-Roubaix because he's doing a lot.
Very confident. He did put in a huge effort just 1 week ago in Tour of Flanders, and it worked out well there. But Cancellara and Hincapie matching the acceleration by Bonnen.
We look down on the 3 leaders now. They're all in blue jerseys. Hincapie is still there. So too Tom Bonnen. So too Juan Antonio Fletcher. and it looks as though Magnus Bagstedt has lost his chance now to repeat in Paris.
Keeping their fingers crossed for the last couple of kilometres too, that they don't have any mechanical incidents. We know George Hincapie had a flat tyre in the early part of the race, but he still looks very calm and very collected. And I think he will go into this finish, Phil, with a fair amount of confidence, because after all, these riders are not too far now away from the section of the cobblestones here at Hem, and once they leave that section, there is only 6 kilometres left to go down to the finish line. Fletcher is doing a magnificent job on the front here, and Hincapie is just sitting there. He looks so calm and collected, Phil. I really wonder if he's got it in those legs of his to win the sprint and beat Tom Bonnen, who's beaten him a number of times this year.
I felt that he wanted the first position on this stretch of cobblestone to control the pace. So looking now at George Hincapie as he drives the three-man breakaway over the last couple of kilometres of Paris-Roubaix, and they're all anxious to prove they have still got something in the legs. This is now Juan Antonio Fletcher. Now comes Tom Bonnen. I don't know which one to pick.
You can't pick any one of these men. It's going to go down to the sprint there, over the top of that false flat on the outskirts of the town of Hem, and not too far away from the town sign that indicates they are into Roubaix.
We're going to find out now. We're heading down the long straight, which brings us to the stadium. Very shortly, the riders will flick over to their left as they go on the final 300 metres of cobblestones. They'll come off those cobblestones, then they'll swing into the stadium, and then it's going to be every man for himself on the bank track of this 400 metres old cement bowl here in Roubaix. There's the flick. That's the last 300 metres of cobblestones, and they're still together.
They're still together. Fletcher in first place, Hincapie in third place, keeping a very close eye on the man in front of him.
And looks as though George has moved up to wants to see the stadium first, perhaps. I wouldn't want to be first on the track. This could well slow right down now as the dogfight starts. Under the kilometre to go. That takes us into the stadium now. This is the swing off the cobbles are all behind now. Now it's heading up towards the track. Wait till you hear the crowd cheer. Now comes the tactics that we know more of a track cyclist. Looking over to see where the rivals are. Oh, I thought for a moment Fletcher was going to go, but no. George doesn't want this position, Paul.
He doesn't want to be first. I would say he really needs to be on the wheel of Tom Bonnen, because Bonnen is the man who must lead out this sprint. They're about to make that sweep, and there they are just on the far side. They're making the sweep into the stadium. 3 men together. George Hincapie of the United States, Tom Bonnen of Belgium, and Juan Antonio Fletcher of Spain in third spot.
Now it's track tactics now. Hincapie's got to have the courage to ride right up against those balustrades there. Force the attack through on the inside. Right, he's got Fletcher gets the bell on the front. Top 3 riders.
Hincapie there just checking his gears. He's looking down to make sure he's got the right gear in. Bonnen is in the best move. Hincapie looking down to see who's going to move first. They're still hugging the barriers. They're on the far side. They're around about 400 metres to go. Still nobody has moved. Hincapie is going to have to lead this one out. He's going to have Tom Bonnen right on his wheel.
Now the track goes flat here. Then he's going to go up the banking. And once they got that banking, Bonnen, I think, will dive for the inside. Now he's getting his speed up. Now he's gone for the inside, but Hincapie's left in late. He's going to have to see if he can get over the top of Tom Bonnen. I don't think he can. Can he come off the bend? Where is that final kick from Hincapie? It's not going to happen. And he becomes the 5th man to win the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in a matter of 8 days. Tom